Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. I've had a lot of caffeine today.
Very nice.
You.
Yeah.
I did that for you.
I mean, I love it for me too. My heart probably doesn't though. Cardiac things.
No, I saw a thing, and of course, like me saying that I saw it means I saw it on Instagram. So that's the extent of what I know. But it had said something about like drinking basically what some people would call excessive amounts of caffeine meant we were going to live longer. And I'm just saying this is full of a mixture of iced coffee and a coffee flavored protein shake. So I'm going to win that game. I'm all for the extra caffeine.
So, and Danica, you will love this. We were at the grocery store the other day, and me and Joe were shopping and getting stuff, and I was like, ooh, cool, Hostess and, you know, whatever, like, stuff that's not necessarily good for you. And she looks at me, and I'm just like, hey, look, you know, it doesn't count if you just eat bad stuff and give yourself heart disease later on and delay it, you know? So, you get me on a little bit quicker, but... And then she didn't laugh, oddly enough.
At least it's like consistent and not like a ramp up at the end.
Yeah, she knows who I am.
Not funny. Not acceptable. Not.
I meant for me, not for her. You know, come on.
Guys.
Just purchasing. I say that all the time. What are you purchasing? Are you just purchasing heart disease, type 2 diabetes? Like, what are you gifting to yourself?
Hey, so I think is that a great intro? Maybe it's a terrible intro to the idea.
Intentions.
Right, being intentional. And what that means, what are the habits of people who tend to find success, who tend to, achieve the goals that they set forth. And I think, the nice part about this is it's not really just a fitness thing. Obviously, we'll talk about, I think, mostly in the context of fitness and specifics in there. But it's one of those things that, the habits that make me successful in terms of, my bodybuilding aspirations or goals are the same things that help me to be successful in my career. They're the same things that help me to be successful, as a student or in whatever, phase of life I was. So I love these kinds of conversations because they kind of seep through to so many other nice things that help us to just, I think, get more out of life that, they're just nice to have. They're beneficial.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people miss out, that it, when you get it together with fitness and nutrition and your health and stuff like that, a lot of times you'll see people that will have those cascading benefits where all of a sudden they're doing a little bit better in relationships, or they're doing a little bit better at work. Maybe it's because they're setting boundaries. Maybe it's because they're opening up new things. It can go different ways. But I think a lot of it is having something that is important to us and that is inherently vulnerable. And then when we start working on it really well, it just gives you that ability to kind of figure, okay, how can I tackle this in other places? How can I use these same steps? And so a lot of it has carryover from whether it's building muscle or it's just trying to eat more vegetables or drink more water, whatever it is, that can have huge, transitions over to other areas of your life.
Ooh, Danica, go. I know you got.
I was just thinking, I recently read, I don't know if I was reading it, maybe I said it, but if someone was videotaping you all throughout your day, would your choices align with the goals that you have for yourself or the life that you want for yourself? And I have tried to, in mindset coaching and fitness coaching for myself, even for my kiddos, the person that I want to be, or the life that I'm desiring, or the health that I'm desiring, being able to take those like moments to be intentional about my choices, because it's a beautiful power. It's a scary power too, to have choice. And it is truly like a freedom and a blessing. And I think sometimes we don't realize how much choice we actually have, and that every small choice or big choice leads us down one direction or the other, right? Like there isn't, like, something else ends up happening after that. So to be able to have like your conscious mind, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, I guess, and being able to tap into that power is pretty amazing when you do. And then you realize like it actually empowers you, and you're like, oh shit, like all along I could do this. Like all along I had this inside of me, and I can actually make choices for myself, and I can bring results from those choices. Like, oh, this is fantastic. I wonder if I could do it here, 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 here. It's just pretty amazing once people tap into that.
So I think one of the things that I find, I don't know what word I want to use, odd, different, difficult, challenging about like that intentionality, is that I feel like, you said, I want to be this thing, I want to be this person. And so I think for a lot of us, what happens is they say, I want this thing. Like fitness, for a great example, I want abs. But what does it take to get abs? And do you want to be the person that does the things that it takes to get abs? Which might be a little bit different for you than somebody else. I think this is where I feel like good intentions and those actions and like backing it up tend to get into a head-on collision, right? So that you just don't end up going anywhere, because oftentimes it's that shiny carrot on the stick, right? It's like, okay, I want that end game thing. And either one of two things I think happens. We don't understand or know what actually it's going to entail to get to that carrot, to get to that finish line, that end game, or we don't actually want to do the things. We want the outcome, but we don't want to take part in the process that, facilitates that outcome. And I think, in an industry where everybody's selling a magic pill, everybody has this secret to success that you've never heard and don't know of, and yada, 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 whatever, there's so many people out there trying to sell you that shortcut or the hack or the whatever, and take away from the fact that, yeah, there's still a process. You still have to be motivated and have the desire to do the things that it takes to get there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that with trying to figure out what it is that it's going to take to get us there, that coupled with what's the most realistic with my life, because I think with the trying to figure it out and with trying to lay it all out, even when we develop our perfect plan and it's like, okay, so this is what my job needs, this is what my family, my work need and stuff like that, here's what I can do. Even with that, you need to give yourself wiggle room for how things are going to switch with it, and then prepare for how you're going to respond to that. And that's one of the things when it comes to, the consult calls and stuff like that, when we initially talk to people, I can kind of tell like with excitement level and like how excited they are to just like dive right in and stuff. Like you want to hear that from everybody, right? But there's some people where there's almost like an edge to it where they're like, oh, I'm so ready for this. And like, they're like so pumped up about it. And the weird thing is that honestly kind of tells me that like, we might burn really bright for a little bit and then have it putter out. And it's where we're at like 100% on the planning and the excitement and the motivation and everything. And then as soon as we hit a speed bump, it can be like, well, shit, now my world's crumbling because I wasn't prepared for Sally at work to have a lunch that they're taking all of us to. And now what do I do with my life? And so I think going into a lot of that, it's not just what is the fat loss and the muscle building going to take? What is this plan going to be? What is all that? Where do I go from here? But also, what do I do when it all goes to shit? How do I respond to that? And how do I make sure that I'm in a good place and keep your head in the right spot? Because that's the hardest part. People 90 times out of 10, like more, or out of 100, people are not going to overdo it in exercise for the most part. Like, we're not usually dieting ourselves into starvation mode or like all of the like scary things like that. It's not sticking to it when things get tough and when we're not staying on plan and stuff. And so I think that if we're set up in a way where we're looking at our intentions with it, like, are we laying out a good plan? Are we laying out something reasonable? And then what am I going to do when it all goes to shit?
But the plan is a big part of that, right? And if you notice that there might be a little bit of extra pause in between us talking, it's the new software, and the mute button is in a different place, and so there's going to be a little bit of a lag. Give us some time to work it out, y'all. Bear with me, okay? All right. We already had some issues. We're working on it. We're working out the demons. Yes, but like a plan. Right, a plan. And so if you look at one of the big like exercise psychology models, of trans-theoretical model, planning is a big part of that, right? It's preparation. And so whether that might be learning, planning, talking about, figuring out how we're going to achieve this and do it, and then it's implementation. I feel like one of the things that those successful people do is they have some semblance of a plan, which is where those calls come in when we say, okay, cool, maybe we need to pull the reins back. We don't want to fly too close to the sun and burn our little wings off. I don't remember which Greek god that was, but that guy.
Chris?
It doesn't matter. Somebody else will comment it on that, and please comment which Greek god it was on this podcast and give us engagement.
I'm calling it Icarus. Let's see if I was right. Somebody fact check me.
It was Icarus, yeah. But so having a plan and being able to step back and say, okay, cool, this is how I'm going to achieve it, lets you really know what you're getting into also, because what ends up happening is without that plan, without that knowledge, without that preparation, we are jumping off the bridge into murky water, and we don't know where the rocks are and where the deeper part is, where it's safe. And so when we end up hitting the rocks, we're like, oh shit, this sucks. Whether that's a meal out for work, drinks at a social occasion, whatever. And now, the hard part is so many people are like, I either got everything or I got nothing.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, well, okay, I can have a little bit of it, and maybe this day wasn't perfect, but it's okay, we're just going to get back to it. Because having that plan really forces you to recognize, like, oh, this is something I just have to keep doing on a consistent basis and stay up with it. It takes that upkeep, that maintenance. Just like any relationship with anything else or any person, it takes consistent work and maintenance. And then we're like, oh, okay, so, all right, today's maintenance wasn't really the greatest. And maybe I kicked the water heater and put a dent in it, but, it still works, and I need to continue making sure it's taken care of and doing whatever, right? And so we just get right back on it. And we get right back to the things that we know are putting us towards the goal.
That is one of my biggest, well, it's becoming maybe a pet peeve. Maybe it's because I hear it so much, is like the all or nothing, especially with my mindset clients, like the 100% or 0%, or the black and white, or like if it's not this way, then like fuck it. And that doesn't help with life. Like, that is just not life. And be the most successful, like when I think of someone who definitely is still progressing but is like successful and everything and has like a good rhythm, will absolutely have days that are not 100%. And I'm like, good, I want there to be days that are not 100%. Because guess what? You're going to find out how you can navigate that, and you're going to grow from that. And then guess what? This day is probably going to happen again. Like, you're probably going to have another social event. You're probably going to have like I don't know if people knew this, but the holidays come around like once every year. Like every year this will happen. So for them to be, no, actually this year we actually called it off, people.
Zero holidays.
Zero holidays this coming year. But to be able to recognize that, good, you should have these experiences, because these experiences foster growth and sharpen skills. And that's the whole point of the whole process, right? So that you could potentially dial it in even more and dial it in even more. So I think being able to recognize, like, I kind of applaud people in a way when they're like, this was a little bit of an off week. And you name it, whatever made it off. And then they're redirecting themselves. And I'm like, wonderful. It sounds like life happened. It sounds like you have this human experience. Good job. I'm glad that we're human. And what did we learn from it? Like, because I'm sure that a kid is gonna get sick someday, or like you might get an injury another time. So what did you learn? What were your takeaways? And could you add that to the program as a tool? Like, oh cool, I just learned this pretty cool skill, or a way to like adapt or pivot or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to add that skill to the program, and I'm going to continue to sharpen it. So maybe it feels not so detrimental, or I'm not so off the next go around. Like, see it as like an opportunity for you to continue to progress overall in like a big picture.
Yeah, because I think a big part of it is not like when you're saying like recognize that these things are going to happen and how you're going to respond to them and stuff. Because a lot of people, I think, look at diets as, I'm just going to be very, very dialed in for this period of time. Everything's going to go well. I'll get to the end goal, and then I'll figure out how to make the two work. That's when I'll take what I've learned in my diet, and then I'll take life, and I'll mix them together at that point. But at that point, we're at our most vulnerable when it comes to hunger. Our body is starting to try to resist adaptations and be like, no, I hate this. Like, give me more food. It's yelling out for stuff. And so at that point, that's where we see people come back from things and it gets out of their hands and it's like, oh shit, I don't know what happened. I'm not good at this unless I'm in a diet. And that's where we see people get stuck. Like, how many times have we seen competitors where like they use prep almost as their way to kind of stay at a body that they like? It's not even that they necessarily want to get to the stage point, but they really like that middle place. And so they might as well just hang out between preps and kind of hold on to it there.
But I don't even think it's necessarily just that. I think for most of those people, it's like that after the show time frame where they just go so hard that then they're uncomfortable with where they at. Like they put on more than they meant to, or more than they wanted to for whatever reason. That's what I see most of. And then they're like, oh, well, I should just prep again because that forces me to lock everything down and get into a more reasonable spot with my body composition, or it gives me the nun with the ruler, right, so to speak, or the carrot on the stick, whatever, of, okay, I have to do this now because I've said I'm going to do it, whatever. Which is weird because the only pressure on us to compete should be whatever we want to compete or not, right? There shouldn't be this external pressure. And so with that, it's like one of those things where we have to have that, I don't know, what's the Elastic Man, the Stretch Joe or whatever it was that was popular when we were kids. You have to be able to kind of like rebound and bounce back when, okay, cool, we had this frustration, this disappointment, this setback, this speed bump. Like, nobody stops driving when they hit a little speed bump, right? It's like, oh, okay, maybe slow down a little bit. All right, I had to really take care of it. Oof, maybe I went over that a little bit too hard, but then we keep going. And so you have to have that resilience in a real way to make sure that, okay, nothing's going to be perfect. Which is a weird thing because I also think, like, in general, our industry puts out this idea that everybody's perfect, that we're without flaw in any way, shape, or form. And that's so far from the truth. And even if people really are, like, just all the time on it with nutrition, training, blah, 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 whatever, that doesn't mean that they're still in a good spot. In fact, I would argue that there's plenty of people out there that knock it out of the park to the T with their diet, their nutrition, their exercise, blah, 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 whatever, but aren't in a good spot at all. And so I think another piece of like what helps people to be successful, like what's a trait is like a more realistic outlook on things, right? So many people treat the health, fitness, diet stuff unlike anything else, right? If you're managing somebody and getting you higher, do you expect them to know everything right off the bat? Nope. But we expect to know nutrition right off the bat because we eat every day. You know, do you expect to go straight to trigonometry? No, you got to do whatever comes before that, algebra and multiplication and addition. You have to work up to it. And so we market, or a physique is marketed, a lifestyle is marketed of, hey, you're going to look like this and let's get to it and you're going to have your results quick. But these people have been doing this for 5-10 years. Yeah, they've been doing it for a decade and they've been immersed in it, garnering experience and getting better and doing the things. It's not really a fair comparison. So I do think that one of the big things is people being able to separate that ideal that marketing sends out versus the reality of what it actually is.
I would say another thing that I just had a client this morning and we talked about this, but the idea of like, I have to be perfect, I have like everything has to be spot on. I honestly think that you find yourself in a worse place because it limits like, and I've never read this, so I don't know. This is my theory. But I feel like it limits your psychological adaptation, like, and your physical adaptation skills, where we should be able to course correct, given like that every day is not going to be robotic and perfect. So then when we're in this robotic perfection, we like limit our ability to use those skills to adapt and to flex and to like go through in like a flowy state. And so then when we're met with adversity or we're met with any challenge, we're like, oh fuck, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I haven't tapped into that skill in a really long time. So then we go into that like all or nothing because we completely lost that ability to adapt and to know that like actually we can do this. We have done this before. We just haven't practiced that skill set in a while. So to miss out on it is like, I don't think that it's advantageous. Like I think that that's what ends up happening post show most often is we just haven't. It's like back in the shed and we like need to take it out and sharpen it again.
It has to put the lotion on its skin.
It really needs to be lubed up.
That got so weird, and I felt it coming. I was like, weird's gonna come out of this. And then sure enough. Yeah, I mean, that's like...
The problem is, though, if it doesn't put the lotion on its skin, then it gets the hose again.
I mean, and so it's learning, right? And so whether or not you choose to put the lotion on the skin, you're going to fuck around and find out, like, what's going to happen, right? And that's part of why, like, meal plans, I see the benefit to them. And, like, sometimes I'll recommend to people, like, maybe we give it a shot for a while. But that's one of the reasons they're not, like, a favorite tool of mine. Because that's one of those examples of, like, living in this vacuum where everything is super controlled. And going back, I think, Danica, you had said it, and then Stephen piggybacked off of it. But when we were talking about motivations and like using prep and like things like that, I think a lot of that is just handing off the motivation almost and saying like, I don't want to be in charge of this every day. So I'm going to sign up for a show or I'm going to do this or that or whatever it is. And then that's the thing I have to do. So like whether or not I actually want to, now there's a date and I have to do it. And they use it to kind of get like pulled along with it for when they don't want to. And that's ignoring the opportunity to just say like I just talked to a client about this where she was like, well, I was thinking maybe I would, you know, we booked this vacation at the end of the year. And so that's a good way for me to like want to lose a couple of pounds, right? And it's like, well, what if instead, because you always want to have something you're chasing, and I'm here for that, what if it was maintaining weight until then? Like, what if instead of having to make this huge drastic change, we were able to look at your average weight week to week or month to month for the next like 6 months and have it be the same thing, and like have life happen, have these adjustments happen, and look at it that way. And then just using that for yourself, not needing to make such a big change that somebody at the gym comes up and says, hey, are you competing? You look like you're in prep, or like needing those kinds of things to happen. But instead just saying like, I'm happy with where I'm at now, and I'm going to work on trying to just maintain this instead of constantly needing to fix it. And I mean, not to say like there's always a time and place for the fat loss phases and things like that, but I think sometimes when we're working, especially on like the intention setting and why am I getting into all of this, like it shouldn't always be because we're chasing the next 5 pounds or we're doing like that kind of stuff. Like we have to have different reasons for it.
But I mean, that's one of the other things that I think is a trait of successful people is they really get into the mundane. They don't mind it. It doesn't drive us crazy. It's kind of like that, man, and I hate to say it like this. Like, remember when we were young and we're like, yeah, but old people get excited about a new refrigerator or washer and dryer. And like, that's stupid and lame. And now that I'm almost 40, I'm like, damn, like this new fridge is going to be so nice. It has the... All right, so my fridge right now, it came with the house, but it's the first refrigerator I've ever had that has the ice and the water in the door. And I'm just like, yeah, fancy bitch, what's up? You know? And I'm like, that's so cool to me. And those things, it's like, yeah, but they make the everyday life like maybe just a little bit nicer or just a little bit more convenient. And so it's not something that's like realistically super exciting, but you just know like, man, I have to deal with this shit every single day, and this one thing's gonna make it a little bit better, right? So like if I'm really overweight, I'm like, fuck, man, like sometimes walking sucks and my hip hurts and this and whatever. I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna have to walk and I'm gonna have to do this stuff every day. And if I lose 40, 50 pounds, it's gonna make that a little bit better every single day. And I don't think that we get like excited about that in the same way that we would with like a washer or a dryer or a new car or whatever it might be that, you know, we have that's more material kind of mindset. And it's like, but why not? Like, would it make my life better if I was, you know, a little bit stronger? Would I feel more capable and able? You know, for a lot of people, the answer is yes. Would I feel better if I lost a little bit of weight? Would my joints feel better? Would I be able to keep up with my kids a little bit better? Would I be able to, you know, go on that hike that my wife's been bugging me about a little bit easier and manage that? It's like, oh, so maybe these things, even though, yeah, they're mundane and they can be annoying and suck sometimes, like nobody likes doing laundry, I get it. Like, are we looking at how to get ourselves a new washer and dryer? You know what I mean? Are we looking at how to improve the processes to make it more realistic? And successful people, I think, are really good at digging into that mundane and not even just like living in it, but also I think continually trying to look for ways to improve it, to make it more efficient and to make it more like accessible, to take less mental fortitude and bandwidth on a regular basis. And they're paying attention to maybe some of those details.
Yeah, no, so I can't remember who started saying it on like Instagram or whatever it was, but like when pennies in the bank like started really getting, was that like Nunez? No, wasn't that somebody over at 3DMJ who used to say that all the time about depositing pennies in the bank? And like each workout was just putting a little bit in there. And it's not about saying like, okay, well today I'm depositing $1,000, you know, and that's going to get me towards my goal. But dividing it up into small little bits and depositing a little bit each day. And if you look at it that way, everything about your day is those tiny deposits, right? You parked at the back of the parking lot and you had to walk an extra little bit into the office this morning. You carried in your Diet Coke and you carried in a bottle of water. You brought an apple today. You like all of these little things that are kind of in the right direction. And Danica, I've used the same idea that you talked about with like if people were watching you. And it doesn't always have to be that like you have to be perfect. Like now all of a sudden we're on the Truman Show and like everyone's judging you and stuff. But you could have...
Which by the way, Truman didn't realize he was on the Truman Show for most of his life. So everybody is acting like they're on the Truman Show, but they know they're on the Truman Show, which wasn't the Truman Show in the first place. You got the wrong show, dog.
Well, you know what creeps me out even more is the idea of like the Saw movies, where that shit stuck with me since I seen where I was like, oh my God, what if there's like a creepy serial killer watching my whole life trying to decide how he's going to murder me based on how I treat people? And so imagine you're being watched, your life is being, you know, someone's keeping an eye on you. And that doesn't mean that everything has to be like, I'm an Instagram health influencer and it's all like picture perfect. But like, how are you putting out into the world, this is how I treat myself. These are my goals. This is the kind of person I am, you know, and then do your choices reflect on that. Do they make sense and do they line up with it? And you can kind of just pull those together and look like, okay, so, you know, today maybe we've had to get breakfast, you know, was Starbucks drive through, and you know you're going to be sitting in meetings all day, and so you're not getting another good meal until later on. But then you walk through the break room, there's a thing of donuts, and you know there's a protein shake, and maybe you grab the protein shake, and that was your deposit. And for that lunch, that was all you were able to do. But you start looking at everything of like, okay, am I spending my flexibility for the day right now? Well, shit, I already had Starbucks for breakfast. I don't really need that donut. I'm not even hungry. I know donuts are good, but I can go to that store. And you kind of go through like, is that worth putting my money there? Or am I going to deposit it into the thing that's important to me? And just kind of making those decisions throughout the day. And that's one of the ways we can do it without even having to like track. You know, I've kind of just done habit coaching with people before in those situations where it's just like at every opportunity, kind of weigh the two, which one's going to make you feel better. And at the end of the day, let's look at it. Could we have been more flexible and still felt like we were on plan? Is there areas that we could have added more? And just really trying to work on that place that gets us to where I feel like I talked about this a lot like last week, but like not constantly white knuckling things. Like the clients who find success don't go into it with the, I can go super hard. It's like that work hard, play hard mentality. You know, if you're interviewing for a company and you ever hear that, fucking run. It, like in most situations, I think if you hear the words work hard, play hard, that means there's going to be a bizarre imbalance of the situations and you don't want to get into it. And like having it be something that can feel much more cruisy. Maybe sometimes you still want to let your hair down, but you don't feel so bad when you're buckled in. You know, kind of cruising in that zone is where it is so much easier to find success and then keep it and not have to constantly start over.
So, I think, I do think that like the social media does play a role in this, because it used to be that people weren't always watching you, right? Like if I went out as a kid and we were out with our friends and we were playing manhunt in the woods and I fell out of a tree and nobody saw it, I didn't fall out of a tree at all, dog. That doesn't exist. That's not real life. Don't worry about it, you know? But I feel like now there's this expectation that people should have just a view of your life 24/7. They should always kind of know what you're doing. They should know every workout you do if you're, you know, a fitness person. They should know every meal that you eat, and you know, like the full days of eating, or the like track my workout with me and do this and do that. Like that's overwhelming. And I get that people like that because it gives you kind of an idea. Okay, this is maybe what that looks like for that person. But you don't have to do that. Your life doesn't have to be on display for everybody. And so, like, those boundaries, this is another, like, successful people have boundaries on important things. I think that's a very easy and reasonable boundary to have, where nobody needs to have access to you 24/7. I guess maybe your kids, maybe your spouse, sure. But, like, in terms of people watching you online and that kind of stuff. So, you don't have to share everything. And then, consequently, in addition to that, you have to understand that I'm not posting when I fuck up all the time online. You know what I mean? Like, and nobody else is really either. Some people might be really, really straightforward and post about that. But even that, like, people will misconstrue it, or it can come off wrong, even if they're being very genuine about it. Like, hey, like, this is just something I've been dealing with. I'm not pity partying or anything of the sort. And so it's one of those things where it's like, most people don't do that. And then it goes back into this, I have the expectation that everybody else is perfect, I should be perfect. And instead of recognizing, oh yeah, social media is kind of bullshit, and it's definitely not a realistic representation of the process or life, And so even though people are doing the full day of eating, and even though people are doing, watch my workouts and do my workouts with me and this and that and yada, 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 whatever, there's still if that video is an hour long, there's still 23 other hours in the day where they were doing other stuff that you have no idea about. But you have to be able to expand that to yourself,
You had said no one should have and you're right, I agree with you. No one should have full access to you. But at the end of the day,
no, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, Danica. Grill me.
I'm not. At the end of the day, you should have a full access to you. So being able to know that this is a tool that I use for my clients, and again, sometimes I create tools forewarning. Sometimes I'm that works really well for me. I'm gonna make this little tool for my clients and it works out really well. But being some things that help me to keep in check or to keep kind of, I like the tool of if somebody were watching me and they were looking in and that's a great tool. But another one is sometimes let's just give an example of, I have a client that snacks a lot, just all snacking, right? Snack, all that shit adds up. She's like, I just can't break it. And I'm like, have you ever thought about if you're the self that you're trying to be, your higher self, your best version of you, walks into the room and hey, asshole, what are you doing? You talk to you and you're like, hey, knock it off. And then you look at yourself and you're like, all right, you got me. Yourself can check yourself. And being able to know that you can actually do that. And we all have different, I know you're going to run with this, Steven. We all have different personalities that live inside of ourselves. I know, run with it. Internal family systems is a beautiful thing too. But being able to recognize that you're going to have a poo-poo type of personality that's fuck it, just eat it, who cares? And then you're going to have one that's what are you doing? Better. You know that you can do better. You know that you're a beast. You can do this. And then there might even be an extremist that's shame. You don't want that person always checking you. You want that really insightful, mindful person to peer around the corner and be hey, what are you doing over there? And then yourself be oh no.
The way I think about it is, and what it comes up to me is why does everything have to be emotional? Why does everything have to be moral, right? We used to talk about all the time, and I think I still do quite often. It's I don't want food to be a morality decision. Food is not inherently evil or bad or good. There's no food with its little devil horns on your shoulder when the ho-ho being yes, saturated fat. It doesn't exist. And so I honestly think that part of it comes down to just getting away from your emotional self to some degree and really locking into that kind of more objective, apart from too much feeling place where it's okay, cool. This either is or isn't going to help me get to where I need to be. I don't need to feel bad per se for making a decision that doesn't necessarily benefit my progress on it. But I should own that it doesn't and be okay with that, right? And I think that's the hard part for a lot of people is we get into that emotional response on everything and then we don't make the same kind of decisions that we would make otherwise. And that, I think, puts us into a spiral quite often.
Yeah, well, that is, I think, too, that if people feel that they often are making choices that are emotionally driven, then I'm always we got to do a little bit of rewinding for me to understand when did that even start, because it doesn't start from a baby. When you're, well, actually, a baby starts crying, a baby is I'm upset, and mommy's I'll feed you, I'll shut you up, I'll feed you. So I don't know if I could go with that theory, but still, I think that I think we miss out on just listening to our body and just being, you're right, very objective, not putting emotion into it. But I would also explore, like, why did that even start in the first place? Like, why was there even an emotion attached to it in the first place when it wasn't really necessary? Potentially it was necessary at some point in your life, and now it's become this maladaptive behavior that we're just trying to get rid of.
And I think that's like the prereq, right? And it sucks because nobody wants that to be the prereq of like, oh shit, why do I get emotional if there's extra food getting thrown away? And I'm like, oh yeah, because I used to get yelled at all the time, and I'd have to sit at the table until I ate all my food because we were fucking poor, and my parents were like, look, this is all we're getting, so you better fucking eat it, or you're not doing whatever else, right? You can't go out and play with your friends. It's like, oh, so that's why it kind of like maybe creates some of those feelings in like my heart hole, you know, because it's a hole, it doesn't have feelings. It's where feelings go to die, right? But Danica. But that's the hard part, because if I can't recognize that, oh, the emotion is there because of past experiences that are no longer relevant, then how do I get rid of that emotion? I don't know many people that can just steamroll through that.
Well, and I think a lot of times with that, it's not even just what goes back to like how was our relationship with food created and stuff, because I mean that, and then being the oldest of four, I feel like both of those contributed to being like crazy with food, with the fact that we were broke. So if there was good stuff in the house, it probably wasn't going to come around again soon, right? Because you only got kicks on the WIC stuff, and so you didn't get the good cereals. And so if they were there, you better hurry up and eat a good amount because you like are one of four kids and it's about to be gone, you know? And so I definitely think stuff like that can contribute to how we think even, you know, 20, 30, 40 years later with stuff. But I also think a lot of the times it goes to like the basic dopamine seeking, or even just like, sometimes it's not even wanting the happy feeling, but just wanting to zone out and have something that like people feel more control over, right? Like I'll notice for myself, if I start getting snacky and like not in like a I'm hungry kind of way, but all of a sudden I'm noticing like, damn, the last couple of days I've been hanging out in the pantry where I'm just like grabbing some chocolate chips, or like it's something weird like that. It's usually because I'm super stressed out about something else that's going on where I feel like stuck in a situation, and then it'll be like, that's just, you know, it's a weird like control thing where I'm like, I'm gonna go get a snack or something like that. And so if I have clients that are like, I can't figure it out, I don't know why I'm stuck in this place, it's like, okay, what are we not dealing with? Like what else is there that's driving you crazy right now, where either we're trying to just zone out when it comes to other foods, or we're having that idea of like, oh, I'm just so mentally done. Like, I just don't want to think about it. I don't want to have to think about macros. I don't want to have to think about exercise. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the plan. Maybe the plan is perfect, and a vast majority of the time it would work for you so well. But now we're dealing with something like maybe a family member died, or, you know, something happened at work or whatever. And it's something that we can't necessarily influence in that moment, and so we're just like looking for a way to control it, and like looking for that stuff is something else that we have to do too. And that's where like the personal responsibility of looking at the full picture, because you can get your body super great, but if your head is a mess, it's going to be that much harder to keep it that way. And then at that point, why is it even worth it? You know, like if we're just torturing ourselves. And so I think putting that work in, a lot of times I have people do it either at the start of the day or at the end of the day. If it's affecting their sleep, then I'll have them do like a dump journal kind of, and not even really like a journal, but just like bullet points. Like, what is the shit you're thinking about right now that's still bugging you from the day? Like that awkward conversation you had, the meeting you have tomorrow, the fact that the kids have this, whatever. Write it down, make yourself a list, and then that way you've put it all down. There's nothing else you can do with it. And then in the morning, we're going to work through a plan, and trying to get that kind of stuff in line so that the other things can be more autopilot, I think helps.
I think that this will be a good podcast, like down the road, to talk about what are some ways that we can kind of calm our mind, or be able to have our mind in a more logical place, like a very calm place where you can think logically and have clarity. That's a beautiful like podcast to do. But I do find that in society nowadays, we're just so overly stimulated by so much that our brain does, in fact, after like so much directed attention expected of us, that we no longer have the battery life to continue through. And so we need that like numbing out, getaway, escape. And food provides that from like a physiological standpoint. It does provide that. And it becomes a habit too. Once we tap into it, then our body's like, oh shit, like my battery's super low. This is what we do to increase that battery. And then we get stuck in a cycle because we're more frustrated with ourselves. If we just realize that like we actually live in a world where we're expected to give our full attention cognitively, emotionally, physically, for hours, and we shouldn't. Like, that's not how we were made. So we need to be able to say, in that moment when we're feeling that, I need to go in nature, or I need to like have something where it's not like ding 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 ding. What we end up doing is draining our battery even more. And because this is like not helping, this is actually draining. We have to think, we have to look, it's a lot of stuff. So that's something that I think would be amazing to touch on, so people can tap into like, what are some tools that I could use to help me in those moments where I feel like I want to be snacky, or I want to go for that dopamine hit.
So maybe we should do a part 2, because we'll have to end here today because I'm on a time crunch and I have a phone call coming up. So blame me for the shorter than normal podcast, everybody. But like, I know, shame, whatever that is. But like, yeah, maybe that is something that we should talk about. Like, because being out in nature is like, I like to dress up in pajamas and try to choke people, right? There's a bunch of different ways that you can kind of recharge your battery and deal with things. Mostly grown men. You know, that's who I like to choke in pajamas.
A weirdo.
But so maybe it's a TBC, to be continued, on this idea of how do we get there? Because I don't like, yeah, it's great to understand and see, okay, these are some of the traits that we see in people who tend to be successful, but saying, okay, these are the traits, and all right, how do we start reinforcing and acquiring those traits is a very different thing.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to dive into some more ideas about like what we would suggest to clients. Like, here's how you bounce back from that. Here's what you would do with this, what we would personally do in those situations. And then you guys could leave any ideas that you have in the comments and stuff like that too. Let me know. If there's just things that help you that's similar to, like, because for a lot of people it's get outside. For some people, I think of like what they say with kids, where it's like, get them outside, get them in water, or get them fed. And so you like, and I usually go in that order. And so if you have things like that, let us know. Drop them in the comments. Our emails are always just our names @ProPhysique. And if you guys have any questions for us or anything, just let us know.
Like, share, subscribe, and as always, thank you for listening.
You have to do that at the end every single time now.
No.